Schools in Stanford University. He is a retired judge of the Superior Court, president of the Hawaii Historical Society, public policy chairman, council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, member of the Juvenile Justice Committee, State of Hawaii, past president, board of presidents for Kamehameha Alumni Association, former member of the Kamehameha Advisory Council, director of Haleapio, director, member of the Hawaiian Bar Association, and he is part Hawaiian. And may I introduce tonight Bill Fernandez.
Malahini kama aina ohana aikane peheoi. That is correct. The response to peheoi, how are you, is my kai. I'm good. I'm healthy. I'm happy to be here. And if you're really feeling good, happy to be here, you say, my kai, no. And you say that no. Like you did when you were a small child. When your mama asked you to do something, and you said, no. Oh, child abuse after that. Trouble. So let's see how well you are. Aloha ko. Pehea oi. Oh, yeah, yes. Maluno kini popo. You are all right on the ball. Hey, remember, you're going to learn a little Hawaiian tonight, not just talking about history. Kamehameha the Great would unify all of the Hawaiian Islands by 1810. And by the time he passed away, the missionaries would come and they found that all of the temples and the idols were gone. And they brought the Word of God to us. The first sugar mills began on Koloa in 1835, and then the missionaries became advisors to the king.
You can have those.
And in 1848, because of the huge number of deaths from foreign diseases that wiped out the Hawaiian population, we were 300,000 when Cook came. We were down by the time of the Great Mahili to just 80,000 people. And Judd, a missionary, told Kamehameha III, you need to create private property. You must divide up the land. And Kamehameha III did just that. 1/3 of the land went to the Mo'i, the king. 1/3 to the Ali, 250 of those. And then 1/3 were going to go to the Maka'aina, so that they could have a home, have a plot of land that they could raise their food and take care of their families. But you know, that was not the Hawaiian way. The Hawaiians believed that the Aina was like a living person. That the Aina was meant to be for everybody. To provide the food, the shelter, the clothes for all. You could not own the Aina. So there was now this cultural divide between the Western world and the Hawaiian tradition. And the Hawaiians not understanding this idea of private property and the process that you had to go through, only 28,500 acres of the 4.1 million acres of Hawaiian land went to the Maka'aina. And I want you to remember the great Mahili in this land division. Well, we move on, and we have immigration. Kamehameha IV, we bring the Chinese in to Hawaii to work in the sugar plantation. The most important decade up to now is the time from 1860 to 1870. The Great Civil War exploded in America, the North versus the South. And President Abraham Lincoln, in November of 1863, said in a few short words the reason for that war. 7 years ago, a new nation was born on the continent of America, dedicated to the proposition that all men, I'm sorry I didn't say women, I will amend his words to all persons are created equal. He then said the reason for the war: to ensure that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. Government by the people. That was a unique idea. At least government by the majority of the people. Very unique. Lord Kamehameha V became king also in November of 1863. And he refused to swear allegiance to the Constitution of 1852. He said that was created by the missionaries. That provided for universal suffrage. I don't believe in that. Also, there were checks and balances on the power of the king. I don't believe in that either. We call the Constitutional Convention. And when the conveners did not give him what he wanted, he said, "Oh, I will give you a constitution." And he did just that. And these are his words: the kingdom is the king. The king can do anything in the kingdom. Now, to us, in modern times, who have grown up in the Republican democracy type system, that seems autocratic, tyrannical. But wait a minute. The Hawaiians, they were accustomed to this. And it wasn't that the king was a tyrant. It was that the king was supposed to malama the aina, take care of the land. Malama the people, take care of the people. If he did not do that, out. That was the Hawaiian way. That was the Hawaiian belief. So you see, you have another value system that kind of clashed with the system being brought to us from America. Another thing that's very important to remember about the Civil War, that after it was concluded, there were 3 very important amendments made to the U.S. Constitution. The 13th, 14th, and 15th. The 13th ended slavery, also ended discrimination in contracts. The 14th was equal protection of the laws. The 15th was the right to vote. Everybody has a right to vote. The war also determined that we are one nation, indivisible. Militarily, it was determined by the United States Supreme Court. Said, we're one nation indivisible. Let us look at our economy. Whaling has been the economy of the islands for 1860. But whaling was on the way out. We had discovered oil in Pennsylvania. Oil was a better source of fuel to light lamps, to oil machinery, not whale oil. Another thing, the war, the Union blockade of the South, the whaling ships could not get to Hawaii. So the whaling business declined. What? Because the southern states were at war, and Louisiana in particular that produced sugar could not export it to the north, why? Hawaiian sugar became a significant product to be distributed to the United States. Demand increased. It was so significant that from 1.5 million pounds of sugar being shipped out a year in 1960, by the time we get to the Civil War, Hawaii was shipping out 15 million pounds of sugar. And so mills prospered. But there's still a downside here. See, you're getting a tie-in of Hawaii to the United States. You're getting a certain dependency of Hawaii to the United States. Well, whaling would come to its end in 1871 because of the Great Arctic Freeze, and also because peace had come to America and the southern states were recovering. We were having a little trouble selling our sugar at a profit. And the sugar planters began to say, the business folks said, we need a reciprocity treaty with America. What's a reciprocity treaty? Well, we send our goods to you, you don't charge us an import tax, and you send us your goods to us, and we don't charge you an import tax. And by the way, the American import tax was 2.5 cents a pound, which really took away the profits for the sugar people. Well, why should America give Hawaii such a favorable treatment? Can any of you guess what might be the proper trade bait that Hawaii might give? You said one word, very important, called land. But what land in particular?
Pearl Harbor.
There, my Cuddy. There you go, Pearl Harbor. Well, Hawaiians didn't resist that whole idea. But things got a little worse for sugar people, and of course, kings changed. And finally, when Lunulilo died without naming an heir, there was a contested election for the seat of King, Queen Emma, against David Kalakaua. David Kalakaua apparently made some deals with the sugar people, and he got elected by a huge vote. He rushed to Washington, D.C., and a reciprocity treaty was concluded. Now, America didn't get Pearl Harbor right then and there, but they got their fingers into what is then called Pearl River. What happened to the sugar industry? Okay, from 20 mills before the reciprocity treaty went into effect, in 5 years, it went into effect in 1876. In 5 years, there would be 63 mills. Immigration boomed. You not only, it wasn't just Chinese, you brought in Japanese, You brought in Fijians. You brought in people from Europe. You brought other people in from Asia to work in the sugar fields. Production of sugar and export increased dramatically from 25 million pounds a year before the treaty went into effect to 250 million pounds a year. Wow. A lot of money to be made in sugar. So you began to have sugar barons and big plantations in the islands. And again, what's important to remember, a stronger tie is being made with the United States of America. Oh, the darling of the sugar people. Wonderful, wonderful man. Oh, lovely hula hands, graceful as the birds in motion, gliding like the gulls over the ocean. Lovely hula hands, Ulimananie. Oh, he was such a party guy. You know that at one party with Robert Louis Stevenson, that famous author said that the king polished off 5 bottles of champagne and 1 of brandy and was still standing. And he loved the hula. He loved the mealies. He loved the culture of Hawaii, and he promoted it. Our king, our merry monarch, had grand ideas. He took a world trip, visited the kings and queens of Europe, came back to Hawaii with wonderful ideas, the grand coronation. He built Iolani Palace. Oh my goodness, the sugar people were starting to scratch their heads because the kingdom was getting in debt. They're saying this man is out of control. Well, things got a little worse. He appointed as prime minister Walter Murray Gibson. And now Hawaiians, the good thing about Walter Murray Gibson for us is, he said, Hawaii for Hawaiians. Oh, boy, the Holiday said, hey, this guy is a racist. He's in big trouble. Next thing, the Emperor of Oceania, Kalakaua, to be king of Emperor of Samoa, Tonga, the Gilbert and Marshall Islands in Hawaii. Now the sugar people are really getting, the pot is boiling, getting ready to boil over. Corruption, there's corruption here. And yes, there was. Two Chinese bought the same opium license. And when Kalakaua was confronted with this, I don't have the money to pay anybody back. Good. You know, the sugar people and business people had formed what was called the Hawaiian League. They also put together the Honolulu Rifles, 5 companies of militia. And they went down to the king and said, you're out of control. You have got to change. We're going to end your absolute power. You're going to sign a new constitution. And the key provision of that is that whatever acts the king wants to do must be approved by his full cabinet. And I want you to remember that, by the way, because it plays a role a little later on in what I'm going to tell you. Kalakaua struggled for quite a bit, but then he finally signed what is called the Bayonet Constitution because of those 5 companies of militia, the Honolulu Rifles. And interesting, isn't it? 1864, no popular vote for a constitution. 1887, no popular vote for a constitution, just the king signing on. there was a little revolt trying to get the king back into power. In 1889, Robert Wilcox, who we'll chat about him a little bit later, that failed. But then, of course, the next most serious thing that happened was that the McKinley Tariff Act was passed in America. And it ended Hawaii's favorable tariff treatment. Panic in Honolulu. We're going to go into a depression. Kalakaua dies, and Queen Liliuokalani takes the throne. She was a feisty lady. You know, we owe a lot to the women. Kahumanu. It started with Kahumanu, and then we can go on up the line. And she felt her brother knuckled under to the Howleys when he signed the Bayonet Constitution. But she felt that what happened then was caused by the greed, the desire for power of the white sugar planters. That really what her brother had been doing had been good for Hawaiians. He brought up their national spirit. He brought back the language, the hula, the culture, the traditions of the islands. I mean, she said that. Read her book. It'll tell you that. Well, at any event, she is in power, and I told you, she's not easy to control. You know? Tough little lady. There is a demand, she said, by at least 2/3 of the Hawaiian people to give us back our monarchy. End this control by the foreigners. And Liliuokalani prepared a new constitution, a constitution that would return back to 1864, to restore the powers of the monarch, to make sure that the monarch, Malama Aina, Malama, the people, Malama Puna, when she presented this to her cabinet, and remember I told you, the cabinet's got to approve, because she took an oath of allegiance to the 1887 Constitution. So she was law-abiding. Well, when the cabinet looked at this new constitution, they went kind of haywire. Said, "Oh, this is revolutionary. Oh, wait, delay. We have to talk. We have to look it over." So she announced to the Hawaiian people that were there waiting for an answer from her that we have to delay this promulgation of a new constitution. Well, what the delay did was, I've told you about that league. Okay. Committee of Public Safety, 15 business people formed. So I said 15, I meant 13. 13 business people formed. Senses and puts me back in this role. No, I'm just cutting short a lot of it. And so she stepped down, not advocating, not that. She stepped down, and Hawaii became under this protected government. The committee sent representatives rushing to Washington. They kind of delayed the Liliuokalani's people rushing to Washington. When they got there, President Harrison was already with their treaty of annexation presented to the Senate of the United States on February 15th. And he said this, he said, there was no involvement by American military or American diplomatic representatives in the overthrow of the Hawaiian government. Okay? I want you to underline that. Okay? Well, the thing is, lame duck. Harrison was out of office by March 4th, and the Senate didn't act on the treaty. And I want you to keep in mind again this interesting thing. You submit treaties for annexation to the Senate. Article 2, Section 2 of the United States Constitution, you submit them to the Senate. Okay? I want you to keep that in mind. All right. So, Grover Cleveland is president, and he says, you know, there's something wrong here. I mean, I'm in Washington, D.C., 5,000 miles away, something wrong. So he gets a fellow by the name of James Blount. He was a congressman. He sends Blount to Hawaii to investigate. Now, in the meantime, what had Stevens done? He'd actually occupied the Iolani Palace with Marines, Iolani Hale with Marines. He declared Hawaii a protectorate of the United States, and he raised the American flag over our islands. When Blount came to Hawaii, the first thing he did was, he says, get these Marines out of here, take that flag down. He went ahead and did a very thorough examination of different people regarding the overthrow. And he came back to Washington to report just what I told you. And that what had happened was an illegal act by the United States that Stevens was without authority for what he did. Cleveland, receiving that information, was now determined to reinstate Liliuokalani. So he sent another minister over by the name of Willis. And now we come to a very, very critical point in the story of the Hawaiian monarchy. Willis met with Liliuokalani, and he had been instructed by Cleveland, ensure you get amnesty for the revolutionaries. When Iolani was asked that question, she said, treason is punishable by death. Oh, and somehow the word beheading became part of the conversation. Well, that ended any chance for Cleveland to do it. And he would address Congress and tell them the facts. An illegal act, an act of war, a friendly nation that we had treaties with. This is not the American way to take over. Well, that's what he said. Yeah, I know it sounds strange, but that's what he said. I mean, Cleveland was a good guy. He was a good guy. Okay, that's what he said. But he threw it into the hands of Congress to decide what to do. Well, of course, then there's a southern senator that gets appointed called Morgan. And we get the Morgan report. The Morgan report is just totally 180 degrees different from Blount. American troops did nothing. They were just there to protect lives and property. They didn't affect the overthrow at all. Whatever was done by our diplomatic representatives was okay. They're whitewash. So now we're in a limbo land, and the Republic of Hawaii is declared on July 4th, 1894. Sanford B. Dole, the first president, and last, by the way. There were Hawaiians that were not happy. Royalists, led by Robert Wilcox. I told you about him in 1889. Robert Wilcox started another revolt. You know, but unfortunately, they were a gang that couldn't shoot straight. All they could do was they hurt themselves. And 126 of the revolutionaries were imprisoned, along with Liliuokalani. And she was finished, along with those others, with a charge of treason. What is the penalty for treason? Yes, death. Aloha oi, aloha noi, ike ala o na no, ikalipo. One fond embrace before we now depart, until we meet again. To save those that were there in prison, abdicated. She gave up the throne. It seemed to be the end of the Hawaiian monarchy. Now, Cleveland was out of office, and McKinley became president. And he had imperialistic ideas. He wanted Hawaii. And he put to Congress, the Senate, another treaty of annexation in 1897. When word got to the islands, the canoe paddles were flying. The ships went back and forth between the islands to sign petitions. Remember the word kue, I protest. And the petitions were circulated throughout the islands, and then they went to Washington, D.C. 38,000 signed those petitions. Let me just give you the demographics. The 1900 demographics is pretty close to this. There were 30,000 Hawaiians, 10,000 part Hawaiians. There were 28,000 Caucasians, of which 11,000 were Portuguese, and the rest were Japanese and Chinese of the population of 154,000 people. When the petitions were presented to the Congress, the vote, which was 58, getting close to 2/3 required, moved down to 46. And it seemed that annexation was there. But the hydra of imperialism rose. We got involved, America did, with the Spanish-American War. We fought in Cuba. We fought in the Philippines. Fought in Puerto Rico. We beat the Spanish. And as a consequence of that victory, we got rights to Cuba. We got, I'll get to Hawaii in a moment. We got the Philippine Islands. We got Guam. And now it was Hawaii's turn to come under the United States umbrella. Well, we know that 2/3 is not there. We know that if you put to a popular election in Hawaii, 38,000 votes would be against you. So what did they do? They passed what's called the Newlands Resolution. Okay, a majority of both houses, the Senate and the House, was sufficient to pass the Newlands Resolution. And people said, well, what's the precedent? Well, that's how Texas got in to the Union, by resolution. One major difference between Texas and Hawaii. Texas voted for annexation. Hawaiians did not. They did not have their chance. But you couldn't stop this imperialistic move because we kept going. Samoa. We interfered with the sovereignty of Colombia to get that 10-mile strip for the Isthmus of Panama, on the Isthmus of Panama, for that canal. We fought in China to get ports. You see, we were trying to do what's called the imperialistic thing. And can you guess why we were so interested in having Hawaii, having the Philippines being involved in the Orient? What's that?
gas station for America.
Well, we were a gas station in Hawaii, but why were we doing all this? Can you think for a moment?
Ports?
Can you think why we're doing it? Okay.
Or have America go
For trade, for commerce. Remember the name Adam Smith, the wealth of nations? How do you become wealthy? Trade, commerce. 90% of all goods at that time were transported by the ocean. So you can see now, Hawaii is really vital if you're going to have trade and commerce in the Pacific. Well, as part of annexation, we had what's called the Organic Act passed by the Congress of the United States, which set up our legal framework in the islands. Go back one slide, Judy. Hawaii came in bound by the U.S. Constitution. I want you to remember that. Bound by the U.S. Constitution. All citizens of Hawaii became citizens of the United States. I want you to remember that. The Hawaiians were not identified as the indigenous people of these islands. They were not identified as the native people. And Queen Liliuokalani herself would say, we had no voice in our future. The islands were controlled by the big 5 companies, all sugar-based. And most important of all, there was 1.8 million acres of land still undistributed. 1 million were the crown lands, the monarchy lands. These are very important. Remember I told you about the Great Mahele? Okay, 1 million. And on the government lands, there were 800,000 acres. And they were all ceded to the United States. Okay, remember that. What happened to the Hawaiian? Well, we were suppressed. Our language was suppressed. Our culture was suppressed. Our traditions were suppressed. As Liliuokalani said, we were treated no better than the Aborigines of the American continent. And at that time, in 1900, it was pretty bad for the Indians. Okay? So Hawaiians did not have a picnic at all. What about the common folk? Wanoala boy, oh my dear boy, you no more hila hila, no more fight stand, no more house, go on a fucking here boy. What's it say? No more hila hila, no money, no holiday, no house. Have to sleep in the park or on the beach. Homeless. Well, Prince Jonah Kuhio was our representative to Congress, begged the U.S. to provide for the Hawaiian people. And in 1920, the Hawaiian Homelands Act was passed, which would allow Hawaiians to get a piece of property to build a whole farm and raise a family. And this came from the ceded lands. The one big problem was there was no money attached. And so the Hawaiians had to figure out a way to make money to improve the ceded lands. Very important. We now have a definition for who is Hawaiian. 50% or more blood quantum. You trace to an ancestor that lived in 1778, the time the Cook stumbled on our land. Another important fact, no recognition of Hawaiians as indigenous people, as the natives of these islands. Again, at that time, I don't think anybody really realized how important that was, but it was important. We're going to fast forward past World War II to the United Nations. That was formed in San Francisco in 1945. And the United Nations had a set of articles on trees that they had prepared. And the United States signed on to that United Nations Charter. Article 73. What is Article 73? Article 73 says that colonized people have a right to secure self-determination, and it is the duty of the colonizers to ensure that happens. Self-determination. Okay, let me ask this of you another question. What territory was high up on the UN list to be decolonized? What territory? Come. What territory? What?
Hawaii.
Hawaii. Why? Because, weren't we colonized? No, that's what happened. That was what they called gunboat diplomacy back in those old times. All right. Okay, so we move on. We have, in 1946, we had the Great Sugar Strike, where Harry Bridges at the end said the Hawaiian sugar worker is the highest paid agricultural worker in the world. We had the Democratic Revolution of 1954. And the result of these events would mean that the 100 sugar mills, the dozen canneries, would slowly pass away. Oh, on August 21, 1959, there was a ballot question put to the people of Hawaii, and I use it broadly, okay? Shall Hawaii be admitted to the Union as a state or state of territory? Well, 94% of the military and the foreigners and maybe just a few Hawaiians voted for this. But, as the independence people will tell you, there was no option on the ballot for independence, for self-determination. No option. No. I don't want you to be cynical by the next thing I'm going to tell you. Okay? But there was a rule that the United Nations had, which was you don't have to keep reporting to the UN under Section 73E of that article if the colonized people join with the colonizers. Interesting, isn't it? Because the UN had a resolution working its way through its chambers called 1514, which would demand that the colonizers do exactly that on the cause self-determination. Didn't come into effect until 1960. America dodged the bullet by statehood. Okay. And we can have arguments back and forth about this. That's not important. You just have to know the facts. Well, things moved along in this respect. 1.4 million acres of Hawaiian land, remember Crown lands and so forth, were given back to the state. Yeah, right, in trust. For 5 basic purposes. It's called the 5F clause. One of the 5 basic purposes was benefit of native Hawaiians. Oh, how nice. Oh, that's so sweet. Oh, there's no recognition of native Hawaiians as indigenous. Well, okay, let's keep going. Well, this is, by the way, if you want to take a look, this is the 1,004 acres that came back to Hawaii, and that's the Hawaiian homelands. We get into 1960, and the Jets were coming. The jets brought tourists. The jets brought people who wanted to see all these wonderful places that they saw in the movies, these beautiful places, and began the new economy of Hawaii. Tourism. What was going on in the mainland? Martin Luther King in 1963, Lincoln Memorial said, "I have a dream. I have a dream of equality in America." And he started the movement to get blacks franchised. I was in California at the time. I was in public office. I became a judge at that time. And in the South, when the blacks tried to register to vote, exercise the 15th Amendment, they got beaten. They got dragged off to jail. If blacks tried to go to the lunch counters to eat, they got beaten, dragged off to jail, spat upon. There were 1,000 white kids that came down to help the people in the South. 3 were killed. It was dangerous. But the fight went on to get the 15th Amendment, the 14th Amendment to have meaning. And it did have meaning because all those efforts resulted in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And what did that mean? Up until that time, the federal government did not get involved in states' rights. Well, once you had that act, the federal courts acted, marshals came, and you had access to the beach. And there became an awareness that something was wrong. Something had happened. And the Hawaiian Renaissance began. Before you know it, all of the traditional things like the hula, the kahiko style, old style hula came back. The mele, the chanting. We had the pokolea voyaging to Tahiti. What did it prove? It proved that our ancestors were wise. It proved that our ancestors were smart. They knew how to get across the ocean. They knew how to build a society that could care for all the people that would be living on an island. The music changed. Cry for the people, cry for the land that was taken away. Uamau, ika aina, ika pono, o Hawaii. And movements began, sovereignty movements. People were working on that history I told you about. They were investigating what had been covered over with layers and layers of ashes, layers and layers of dirt. And you found out that some wrong had been done. Now, before I get to the next part, what about benefit of Native Hawaiians? Huh? What about that? 1954. Did the Hawaiians get anything? Oh, no. See, as Leo Kalani said, we didn't have a spokesman who spoke for Hawaii. Well, finally, because of this renaissance, the legislature caused the 1978 constitutional amendment to be passed. Lo and behold, folks, for the first time, our language was made the official language of Hawaii. No longer could it be banned. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs was created. to administer the 20% of ceded land monies that should be coming to Hawaiians for their benefit. And I want you to underscore this. Hawaiians only were to vote to elect Hawaiians only trustees. I want you to underscore that, okay? All right. And as I said, movements got started for sovereignty because people became more and more aware. This is a picture of Kalahui, the nation. I've read their constitution. It's very interesting, a good constitution, I must say. But I know that there's some hooky about it because what it's talking about is a nation-to-nation relationship with the United States like the Indian tribes enjoy, okay? That's what that Constitution talks about. I read it. So, you know, things change with time. I know that. But at any event, that's what the Constitution said. And as I told you, there were other sovereignty movements that were occurring at the time. But the big kick, the big admission was the Apology Resolution of 1993. In that resolution, for the first time, America admitted the illegal overthrow, admitted the act of war, admitted that Stevens and American soldiers had taken away Liliuokalani's kingdom, admitted that the Hawaiians had never voted to become part of the United States, admitted that the Hawaiians had never given away their land, their ancestral land, at least the 1.8 million acres, had never given it away, not by vote or anything else. And also admitted that Hawaiians never relinquished their inherent sovereignty. Okay. And read the Apology Resolution. You know, if you doubt anything I've been telling you about what happened in back in the 19th century, I want you to read that. Okay? Do that. Well, you know, there's a problem. Problem. You know, I've been in the judge business, law business a long time. And I'll tell you one thing. All those whereas clauses have no meaning. That's what happens. Hawaiians say, I don't have to pay taxes. Apology resolution. Oh, you gotta pay your taxes. I don't have to register my car. Oh, you gotta register your car. Okay? This is Hawaiian land. Bumpy kind of hilly, you remember Bumpy? Yeah! You know, sitting in Makaha Beach. Hawaiian Nation! Well, Bumpy finally made a deal, but he had to make a deal. I guess otherwise he would keep being sent to jail. But in any event, you see, apology resolution did not have any standing. Okay. And what is the next big goal?
Sir,
Yeah.
I want to relate to you guys, every one of you guys. I'm close to 90 years old, and I've fought for our people many years. And the sovereignty that we're talking about, that Queen Liliuokalani didn't give the United States sovereignty. This is very important for us Hawaiians, because I am an activist. I was involved in the labor movement in Hawaii when I was 10 years old in 1937. And when President Roosevelt became president, he enacted the Wagner Act, and that's how we were able to form labor unions. And I was there at that time, and I suffered a lot. I was called a communistic instigator, and also a fifth columnist. But that didn't stop me I didn't retaliate, but I got all the plantation workers together and I said, we're either gonna swim or sink. And the only way we're gonna swim is unity. When there is unity, we can solve problems. And that's how we were able to overcome management. And this is my life. After we became over management, I was approached to work for the Territory of Hawaii as a construction on highway. But because I had principles that I had to live by. If I was with the system, I couldn't advocate my business, sharing with, and that's the reason why I've come to here today to share my manao with you folks, because Hawaii was never given to the United States. And this is what I want you, Makuas, today to remember. I'm close to 90 years old, but my mind is just, I was able to acquire when I was 2 years old. You can ask me a lot of questions about what happened in the 20s. I can relate to you guys until this very day. I was just fortunate to have the ability to remember. And this is what I'm here tonight to share what I've experienced. And Mr. Fernandez, I thank you for there's one version that you have about our history.
Thank you.
And I have these two books was written by Dr. Keanu Sai. And these are valid history, what had happened to us Hawaiians. And may I relate to you guys, my tutus never recognized Kanaka Maoli. We were always recognized as Kanaka o Hawaii. And this is what I want to share with you folks. My tutus didn't accept the United States as citizens. We were forced to be American citizens. We are Kanaka o Hawaii, not Kanaka Maoli. This is what my manao can share with you folks.
Okay, mahalo.
I want you folks.
Thank you. Well, a lot of emotion that involves around this whole issue, and certainly the reason that I felt it was important to give these talks, this talk, was that you can understand what happened back in history, which would cause people to have a kind of pain that was just expressed. Because I keep reiterating this, Hawaiians never voted for annexation. Hawaiians never voted to give up their sovereignty. All right, but again, the next big blow that struck us was the case of Rice versus Cayetano. Freddie Rice felt that Hawaiians only voting in OHA elections violated what amendment? 15. And he filed suit and won. The United States Supreme Court said you cannot have Hawaiian only voting, but they said something even worse for us. Native Hawaiians are just a race. They did not say we're indigenous people. They did not say we're the native people of Hawaii. They said you're just another race. Remember, we all came in as citizens? All right, so you're a race. We're in the same boat as the people in the South, but in a reverse position. And the lawsuits against Hawaiians blossom. The trustees only Hawaiians attacked. OHA attacked, you can't benefit only Hawaiians by that ceded land money, even though it's come from our land. Department of Hawaiian Homelands, give all that property back. You can't favor a race by these homes. Kamehameha schools that I went into, we got attacked for our preference policy. The 13th Amendment played a role. See, I went through this whole period of pain for our Hawaiian people because of the lawsuits. Now, I know that there are Hawaiians that did not agree with the Akaka bill. I know that. But what the Supreme Court said was that the reason that the Indians, and I know Hawaiians don't like to be put in the same category as Indians.
Yes.
Columbus made a big mistake when he discovered America. He thought he found India. But the big difference between the Indian community is, and the rest of the U.S., is that they have federally recognized tribes, federally recognized indigenous people, and that they have their own limited sovereignty, their own government, so that their acts are not racial, but political. Now, folks, I'm giving you the shorthand. I don't want to go into the 50, 60 pages of the legal opinion. That's the shorthand. Political, because you're federally recognized and you have achieved some form of sovereignty that is approved. In the instance of the Indian tribes, it has always been through the Department of the Interior. Okay, so the Akaka bill went to Congress to try to get federal recognition and to start the creation of nation building for Hawaiians, limited sovereignty, just like Kalahui. This is very similar. Unfortunately, the race card kept getting played against us, and the Akaka bill could never get that two-thirds majority that it needed to get passed, so it died. The state of Hawaii, who has been very good, I would say, in terms of, as of late, in terms of treatment of Hawaiians, came up with what's called Act 195. Act 195 is a state act which provides for state recognition of Hawaiians as native and allowed for the nation building. In other words, there would be a commission of 5 people who would create a roll of electors among the Hawaiian community. And once that roll was established, then there would be an AHA convention, a convention for a constitution, and delegates would be selected from the people that had signed up on the roll to go to this AHA convention and create a constitution, which would then come back to the electorate for approval. Now, I think, and OHA has been the prime mover financially in the Kanai Rule Commission. I know OHA has said over and over again that whatever the people choose, they will not say no, maybe not say yes, but they won't say no. So that if people take the course when they're in that AHA convention of independence or kingdom, then so be it. Okay? But it is preferable, and of course that's my words, just if you want to stay in the United States of America and have American citizenship, that you vote for and agree to a nation-to-nation relationship with America. That would mean that if that happens, you keep all of your current benefits as part of in America, whether it's Social Security, Medicare, welfare, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there is, again, a strong feeling that we want independence. certainly one avenue is to try to go back to the United Nations and using Article 73. Here's the downside. Article 73, whenever there is a case of controversy that involves a breach of international law, is heard by the International Court of the Hague. That when the International Court of the Hague makes a decision against a nation, it then refers the matter to the Security Council of the United Nations. And here's the precedent. In Nicaragua versus United States, where we interfered with the internal affairs of Nicaragua, remember Iran-Contra? Remember Iran-Contra? Reagan's time? We were flat. Goes to the Security Council. The United States has to veto. That's the end of it. So where are we today? Well, we are today status quo. Right now, Kanai is stalled. There's a lot of hooky about it. The Department of the Interior was approached. Just finish tell you that part of the story. Because if you recall, I told you earlier, how did the Indian tribes get to have recognition? They got it through the Department of Interior. So the Department of Interior was approached as to whether the executive power would be used to provide recognition for Native Hawaiians as indigenous people and aid in the nation building. In June and July, there were 15 hearings in Hawaii. Not to do recognition, not to do nation building, but just to decide whether or not the Department of the Interior should do anything at all. Now, 95% of the people that testified at those hearings said no. There has been a movement, because you can send in ballots, there has been a movement where 2,600 yes votes have been submitted to the Department of the Interior. I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. So at this time, those are the options, and that's where we are at. But I say to all of you, what is good for Hawaii is good for Hawaiians, and what is good for Hawaiians is good for Hawaii. Please join me in our national anthem. Hawaii ponoi, nanai komoi, kalani ali, ke ali, imanua aie,
I live up right up the road. You still up in the house dancing? Sure.